You hear it all the time in business, right? This big debate. Is going green a brilliant competitive advantage, or is it just a really expensive distraction? Well, it's a massive question. And in this explainer, we're going to dig into the surprising, data-backed answer.
So let's just cut right to the chase. Does it actually pay to be green? Now, you might be hoping for a simple yes or no, but as we're about to see, the real answer is a journey with a pretty wild twist. It's not that simple, not even close.
For years, this whole argument has been a stalemate. It's like a classic tug of war. In one corner, you've got the cheerleaders, promising a stronger brand, tons of new customers, and better efficiency. But in the other corner, you've got the skeptics, warning about huge investments, complicated changes, and, no guarantee you'll ever see a return. It's a standoff that leaves a lot of leaders totally paralyzed.
So how do we break this tie? Well, opinions are one thing, but what we really need is cold, hard data. And that's exactly what some new research gives us. We're talking about a deep dive into 13 years of info from major U.S. manufacturing companies, all to find a real, definitive answer.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the green dilemma. Then we'll uncover this surprising U-shape in the data. After that, we'll explore something called the turbulence amplifier. And finally, we'll pull it all together into your green strategy.
So let's dive right into section 1, the green dilemma. Think of this as the ultimate tightrope walk that every company is on, trying to balance this intense pressure from all sides with some very real questions about the financial impact. And look, this pressure isn't just some vague feeling in the air. It's a real force. As the research points out, you've got customers, investors, and even regulators all demanding change. The push to go green is coming from literally everywhere. So, all this pressure, how does it actually affect performance and sales? Well, that brings us to section 2. And honestly, this is where things get really interesting. We're talking about the surprising U-shape, a totally counterintuitive link between green initiatives and growth. Now, you'd think it would be a straight line, right? The more you invest in being green, the more your sales go up. Simple. But nope, that's not what the data shows, not at all. The research found something pretty startling. When companies first start on their green journey, their sales growth can actually take a nosedive. Yep, you heard that right. It can get worse before it gets any better. What this creates is a distinct U-shaped curve. This is the absolute core finding of the research, and it fundamentally changes how we need to think about building a sustainability strategy. So why the dip? What's going on at the bottom of that U? Well, first, there are the huge upfront investments in new technology. Second, a lot of the easy first steps can be copied by your competitors in a heartbeat. And plus, customers can be pretty cynical, right? They might just write off your initial efforts as greenwashing. All that diverts resources and can put the brakes on sales for a while. But, and this is a huge but, if you can push through that valley, that's when you start the climb. This is the long-term payoff. When you show a deep, real commitment, it stops being a cost and starts being a serious market differentiator. You build powerful brand loyalty, your reputation gets a major boost, and you start seeing actual savings from less waste. You've turned it into a real competitive advantage.
Okay, so we've got the U-shape. Got it. But hold on, because there's another layer to this. What happens when you throw a little chaos into the mix? That brings us to section 3, the turbulence amplifier. This is all about how a fast-changing, volatile market can completely change the game.
So, market turbulence sounds kind of intense, but it's actually a pretty simple idea. All it means is, how fast is your industry changing? How quickly are customer tastes shifting and new competitors popping up? Now, here's where it gets really fascinating. Think of market turbulence as an amplifier. In a stable, predictable market, that U-shape we talked about is pretty flat. The dip isn't so bad, and the climb on the other side is moderate. But in a really turbulent market, whoa, the U-shape becomes much, much steeper. That initial dip is deeper and a whole lot riskier. But the climb back up, it's significantly higher. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Turbulence makes the journey through that valley riskier for sure, but for companies that truly commit and make it to the other side, the rewards are just so much greater. Higher risk, way higher reward.
Which brings us to our final and maybe most important section, your green strategy.
This is where we turn all these big ideas into a practical tool that you can actually use to make decisions.
What's so cool about this research is that it's not just some vague theory. They actually pinpointed the bottom of the curve. It all comes down to what they call a green manufacturing orientation score, and the magic number is around 0.14. Think of that score as a measure of how deeply green practices are baked into your company's DNA. This number is the key that separates the financial pain from the financial gain.
So with that score in mind, we can lay out a super clear game plan. Step 1. If your score is low, say below 0.07, you're in the danger zone. The advice, don't make huge new investments. Just maintain what you're doing or run small pilot programs. Step 2. If you're in that middle range, getting close to the turning point, you're at the edge of the valley. You want to scale up, but do it carefully, step by step, and watch the numbers like a hawk. And finally, step 3. Once your score is above 0.178, congratulations, you're on the upswing. Now's the time to hit the accelerator and double down on the green practices that give you the biggest bang for your buck. And all of this leaves us with one last big question for you to think about. Knowing that the path to being truly green almost certainly means going through a valley of financial risk, is the view from the top really worth that climb for your organization? For anyone who wants to geek out on all the details, this entire explainer is based on the 2026 paper by David Benjeg, Kristen Giesa, and Thomas Shaper, which you can find in the International Journal of Production Research. Thanks so much for tuning in.